The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to the realization of evil which has been introduced into our midst. J. Edgar Hoover. Cognitive dissonance is an uncomfortable feeling by holding two contradictory ideas simultaneously. This usually manifests itself in the difference between how we think we should act and how we actually act. The person that goes to church and does all the prayers and sings the songs the loudest might think of themselves as a good and holy person, but after church, if they get in the car and yell and slap their kids, there would clearly be a dissonance between how they think they are and what they are. This will result in an uncomfortable feeling called cognitive dissonance. The typical Republican is pro-life and talks about the sanctity of life, and yet usually there are the ones that support the war machine that spreads death throughout the world. The typical Democrat opposes war and talks about how innocent civilians are lost in barbaric wars, and yet they are also the same people that support abortion. Both of these groups hold contradictory ideas as truths that they feel are worth fighting for. If life is truly sacred and needs to be protected, then Republicans should be pro-life and anti-war. If humans have the right to kill each other and impose their will upon others, then abortion and war are one and the same. The result is that we have millions of people holding these contradictory ideas. And yet, if they really thought about it, they would not be able to move on. We see this in every election cycle when we think that there's somehow a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, when every single fact points to the stark realization that there is no difference between the two parties on the most important issues. More debt is created by a privately held central bank to fund more spending, to create more wars, to secure more resources, to create larger corporate profits, to ship more jobs overseas, to destroy the middle class, to create a police state, to control the whole game. Nothing in my lifetime, no matter who has been in the White House or Congress, has ever challenged the way our paradigm operates. And yet we still feel some need to vote. The foundation of all mental illness is an unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. Carl Jung. People are predisposed to thinking that they are correct, despite evidence to the contrary. If a kid fails a test, he might say to himself that he's smart, and he'll justify it by saying that he's just not a good test taker, or the teacher didn't like him. People who smoke might think of themselves as a smart person that makes good decisions, and yet they're actively increasing the risk of getting lung cancer. Dissonance is also magnified by how much that person suffered to attain that idea, or how much he is personally invested in that belief. A singer tries out for American Idol and is laughed out of the audition for singing horribly, will leave the audition and most likely blame the judges, or their choice in music, or that they didn't get enough rest. Anything except the uncomfortable idea that they are in fact a horrible singer, and that they wasted so much time and energy on something that they believed in so much was ultimately false. Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy. Henry Kissinger. Marines created dissonance when they suffer to go through boot camp. They overlook the fact that they are stripped of their individuality, trained to sacrifice themselves at the instant obedience of their commanders, live lives of poverty that are extremely hard on families, and that a folded flag is somehow worth their kid not having a father. Few Marines ever stop to see that they're not fighting to spread freedom. They are fighting for corporate interests by stealing the natural resources of other nations. General Smedley Butler was one of the most decorated Marines in history. He fought through his dissonance, not by justifying his actions. He did not try to convince others that being Marine was worth the sacrifice. He fought through the dissonance by admitting to himself and the world, quote, "I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. Looking back at it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do is operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents. If we were merely dealing with the law of averages, half of the events affecting our nation's well-being should be good for America. If we were dealing with mere incompetence, our leaders should occasionally make a mistake in our favor. We are not dealing with coincidence or stupidity, but with planning and brilliance." Gary Allen. If someone has their entire existence tied to an idea or a job, the cognitive dissonance grows stronger. Take for an example a banker. They are more apt to justify the debt enslavement of their neighbors in numerous ways, rather than seeing that they're actively enslaving another human being. Rare is the man who sees the true cost of their actions and quits doing it. It is infinitely easier to create justifications than stop the actions that cause the dissonance. Noticing a contradiction in ideas will lead to dissonance, and this can be experienced as anxiety, guilt, shame, anger, embarrassment, and stress. When people are confronted with the conflict cognitive dissonance produces, they must resolve the conflict in order for that person to move on. Cognitive dissonance can be resolved in many ways. The anxiety that comes with the possibility of making a bad decision can lead to rationalization, the tendency to create additional reasons or justifications to support one's choices. The classic fable of the fox and the grapes is the story of the fox seeing grapes hanging from a tree. The fox wants to eat them, but when he realizes he can't reach them, he overcomes his cognitive dissonance with the rationalization that the grapes are probably sour and he really didn't want them anyways. Hence the phrase, sour grapes. The same process is repeated in our society by people desiring something. When they find that it is unattainable, they go about reducing the cognitive dissonance by criticizing it. This is most obvious in the Occupy Wall Street movement.
Capitalism means private losses and private profits. It doesn't mean private profits and socialized losses.
We're in the 1%,
No.
and we're in the 99%.
Well, what wouldn't you like to get into the 1%?
No,
You don't want more money. You don't want. If I offered to put you in the 1%
it's not
right
a
now,
matter
you're
of whether,
down.
and I would pay my share and get rid of the Bush tax cuts
Wait a minute.
immediately.
What do you?
Immediately.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Just like
Hold on.
Warren Buffett and his
No.
secretary.
What?
I would
Let me ask
pay
you a
my
question.
fair share
Let me ask you a
so
question.
that these folks
Hold on.
could pay their student
me ask you a
loans,
question.
could get off of food stamps, could be successful,
you a question.
just
Wait,
like you.
wait.
What are you
Hold on.
driving?
Hold on.
They don't have a car.
I am giving the government half of what I earn. You think they should take more?
I think we should get rid of the Bush tax cuts.
Dissonance can lead to seeking confirmation from biased sources,
I pay much more than 35% of my total
What does
income
your
in
secretary
tax.
pay? What do you think of the
Less
Buffett
than me,
plan?
and I employed her.
Well,
Buffett is full of it because Warren Buffett is the biggest shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway, so he's paying a 35% tax on his profits.
the denial of contradictory evidence,
What about the Board of Education?
I want to get rid of the
Okay.
entire federal Department of Education. Yes,
Then-
it is
then-
wasting our
right,
money,
then-
and it is running up
then,
the cost
sir-
of education.
Sir, what I've learned, no, let me finish. What I've learned over the years is to never argue with a fool. And
I'm
you,
not a
my
fool.
friend, are a fool.
and many other ego defense mechanisms. The two main forms of dissonance are hedonistic dissonance, which people act in a destructive behavior to themselves, like smoking; moral dissonance, in which people act in a way that is destructive to others. This could be as simple as lying or something much more destructive. A common justification for moral dissonance is the ends justify the means. By not having the trivium to logically process and solve the dissonance by ridding oneself of the contradictory belief, self-delusions are made to solve the dissonance so that people can live with themselves. One day you will wake up and confront reality, or it will confront you. Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. Henry David Thoreau.